I kind of wanted to know how you got your start in word of mouth marketing and how you kind of built like your brand and like a business around that.
So I got my start in word of mouth marketing. So I was in business school and I was sitting at the computer lab, and this is back in the late 90s. And so back then the computer screens were very sensitive to sunlight. So it was a very dark place, so the sun didn't mess and burn out the screens. And so when you went in, the ambient light in the room was basically coming from the screens. And at that time, the search engine that everybody used, the ambient light that came off it was blue. It was this light blue. So there was a light blue glow in the room. So I'm sitting there and I'm doing a paper like all great MBA students. I'm definitely doing it last minute. So, it's due tomorrow and it's, 6,000 words on whatever I'm writing, and I'm writing away and working, and I'm using the search engine. So back in the late 90s, search engines were basically awful. They were not particularly good. So of course, I put something in the search engine and it returns back something dumb. And so I'm irritated, so I'm swearing at the inanimate object. The person to my right leans over and says, "Hey, have you used," and they said the Google, "have you used the Google yet?" And so I got to Google site and I used it. I was like, this thing is really cool. So I'm like, all right, so I'm using Google. And you remember that the Google screen is basically white. All right, so 20 minutes later, the person to my left is yelling at their machine. And I'm like, "Hey, Google." And by the time 3 or 4 hours later, I was done with that session of writing the paper, I stood up and the whole ambient light in the room had changed from that blue color to that white color. Because basically everybody had talked about Google and they had recommended Google to the person next to them, and the whole thing had changed. So I was like, that's really interesting, right? Because how things work and why they work that way has always been kind of interesting to me. Mm-hmm. So next couple weeks, I watch campus and I watch what people are doing, and I was like, how does that happen without any advertising? Mm-hmm. So University of Chicago is very kind and they treat everybody like an adult. And so the second year, I did all my work. And then when I wasn't doing my work, I backwards integrated and figured out, kind of reverse engineered what I saw happen and created this process and talked to all these professors and what do you think? And some people thought it was stupid and some people thought it was interesting, but had more work to do. And I graduated and I turned down the general things you would think somebody who goes to a business school and does well, gets an opportunity to do. I got all those opportunities and turned them all down to start Fizz and just basically pursue this word of mouth marketing thing. So that's how I started. So I had my, just right out of the movies, I had my eureka moment when I was in business school, and I've just continued to follow that through, I don't know, for like 25 years now. It's a lot of work. Yeah. It's a lot of work. I mean, 5 years after graduation, I definitely was not making nearly what some of my classmates were making, but I was always happy. So I cut a deal with myself when I was just in the middle of college, and I just said I would always be happy, and I would just make decisions like, if it feels good, do it, and then I would continue to do it. And then I said, hey, but by the time I'm 30, I need a plan. So I was out of B school, I'd done 3 or 4 different things, and I thought I knew what I wanted to do, and I've just been doing this because I like it. Like every day I wake up and I'm just psyched out of my mind to be doing what I get to do.
And I love that you gave yourself like some time to like achieve it. You weren't like expecting, I'm gonna graduate and I'm gonna know exactly what I'm doing tomorrow or what I'm doing in 10 years. But you said, hey, when I'm 30, I need a plan.
Yes.
Really cool.
So that's an interesting point. And I think that's an interesting point for CIMBA people and everybody else. Like, there's no way. So I graduated in 2000 and it's 2024 now. There's a whole half of the economy that probably didn't exist in 2000 that exists now. So this idea that when I got out of B school, I was gonna know what I was gonna do and that's what I was gonna do, that seems foolish now looking back on it, had I made that decision, because I don't know where my life is gonna take me. I don't know where all the macro economy stuff is gonna take me. So, dude, just do it. I think with people's careers, people are watching this, I think you really need to be thinking about kind of in 3 and 5 year increments, maybe 3, 5, and 10. I can't imagine thinking about something and having much ability to be accurate outside of 10 years.
How has word of mouth marketing evolved over time, especially with the increase of social media and online influencers?
So word of mouth and is very interesting because it's at least 3,500 years old. Like I stopped looking when I found a rock in a museum that basically it was found in Mesopotamia back in the day. And it basically says, hey, Ahmed down there, he makes the best baskets, you'll love him. So it was kind of an online review, but just carved onto a stone. And I was like, okay, we don't need to, this has been around for long enough. So what's been really interesting about word of mouth in the rise of social media is social media and the measurement of social media has made it so much more obvious about how many conversations are happening and where those conversations go. I mean, you can totally sit on top of the data stream and you can watch the communications go, where they go, who's talking about it. Oh, this demographic is doing this. Oh, it's spreading at this rate. And before social media, it was very expensive to use that because it's so expensive to measure. Now you're like, it's very easy to measure this. So we really use social media in that way as a measurement tool as opposed to a communications tool. As marketers, we should not care where people have a conversation. We care that we are making it as easy as possible for people to have conversations wherever they are most happy having conversations. Don't channel, guide. Guide people. Don't force somebody to shoot. Let them go do their thing. You just want them to do their thing. And you want to make it as easy as possible for them to do their thing in as efficient way as they can.
One of my questions to you, Ted, would be what advice or thought could you share with us students to share our story to create our own business?
I think your story is really about what brings you happiness. You know, you have to be comfortable with you. So all the people that I always talk to, they're like, oh, I feel I should do it this way or do it that way. I'm like, look, if it feels good, you should do it that way. And there's lots of different choices you make. And you just need to know there's pluses and minuses, there's benefits and consequences to the same thing. So I figured out, there's a poet out there who said, to thine own self be true. That's kind of where I'm at. And I just know that sometimes this is a benefit and sometimes it's a cost, and I have to be okay with that. But every path has that. Entrepreneurship is hard, but so is working in a company. So what I always tell people is, so in English we have an idiom, the grass is always greener on the other side of the fence, right? That is 100% true when it comes to, oh, should I work for a small business or a big business? So if you're a big business and you're an IT problem, just call somebody and somebody shows up. If you're a small business, like, you got to drag your computer down to the Apple store and hope the genius is actually a genius. And you got to bring it back and you got to do your own stuff. But so much more freedom, or there can be more freedom and more innovation if you're working for a small company than a big company. So for me, starting a business is the same thing. I mean, it's horrible unless you love it. And if you love it, you should do it. So I like it, so I go do it. So if you like being an entrepreneur, you should do it. But it's expensive, it's grueling, it's personally expensive in your time. Is personally grueling. So it's a hard life. But if you love it, then you never go to work. You just have fun all day.